Hey, 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 my little friends. Welcome to our Llama Mosaic tutorial. Today we're going to be creating this adorable llama project. He's got these cute circle tiles that make him look sort of fuzzy and soft. And he's really fun to paint and really fun to tile. So let's talk about what we're going to need on our table for step one of our project today. First of all, you're going to want to make sure that your workspace is covered with a placemat. You're also going to want to make sure that you are wearing art clothes or a smock. We will be using acrylic paint and glue today, and both of these materials are difficult to remove from tables and fabrics. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and take a break, grab your smock, grab your placemat, and head right back over. During this video, if at any point you need to pause, fast forward, or rewind, feel free to do so. Take a break, have a snack, jump back in. All right, so we're gonna get started. We are gonna need water on our table. I've got some paper towels. From your kit, you're gonna need this little square blue brush, blue-handled brush. And you are going to need your paint colors. For this project, we have 6. We have a big container of white, and then you have a little bit of each of these other colors. We have blue, brown, gold, orange, and pink. You are also going to need your mixing card or your mixing plate. Some of your kits have mixing cards, some of them have plates. Whatever's in there for you, you're just going to want to grab that. It's either going to look like a paper plate or it's just going to be a little square of paper cardstock. All right, so we have everything we need to do step one of our project. Oh, just kidding. You also need your blank llama. If you're missing any of these materials from your table, you could push pause now and grab them. All right, so for the first step of our project, since our llama is mostly white, and then he kind of has all these little details on him, the easiest thing to do for this project is going to be to paint the whole thing white. Going around all of these details with the white doesn't make sense. It's going to be easier to just paint over the whole thing with white and then put the other colors that we need directly on top. So I'm going to paint right out of my container. You don't need to put this onto your mixing plate. We're not mixing it with anything. We're honestly and very easily just going to be covering everything with white. So a couple of things as you get started with your painting. You can go right over these black lines. As your project dries, the black lines are going to reappear. And if they don't, it's very easy to just paint back over them and get them to sort of pop out. We're also going to be, in the next step of our project, we will be using a black Sharpie to outline all of those. So it's not necessary to go around them. You can go right over them. Another painting tip that I have for you is that you want to try to spread your paint out thin and even. So once I have a little section covered, I'll go back with my brush and I will just spread my paint out so that the color looks really even on my project, and also so that there's no big clumpy areas. We want it to be pretty smooth and pretty thin. All right, so we're working our way down our llama's neck here. I did want to give you a couple of quick facts about llamas, and also wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between a llama and an alpaca. And these might be facts that you know, that you've learned before. There's a really great place in Queens called the Queens Zoo, and they have a cute petting zoo in there, and their petting zoo has llamas and alpacas. So hopefully someday you can take a field trip there if you've never been there, and you can check out the llamas and the alpacas. But we'll do a little quiz and we'll see how many answers you can get right, and I'll give you the answers while we're painting this section. Okay, so quiz question number 1 is, what is bigger, a llama or an alpaca? The answer is a llama. Llamas are bigger than alpacas, and they can be actually up to 400 pounds, which is pretty big. Alpacas typically only weigh between 120 to 150 pounds. So they are significantly smaller than the llama. All right, question number 2. We'll do like a matching. So we have 2 choices. We have straight pointy ears and we have longer banana-shaped ears. So which one of those ears belongs to an alpaca and which one belongs to a llama? The choices are straight pointy ears and larger banana-shaped ears. Survey says llamas have longer banana-shaped ears and alpacas have straight pointy ears. All right, we're learning a lot right now about llamas and alpacas. Spreading my paint out just to make it nice and even and thin. If you're not working as fast as me, don't worry. When I'm done, you can just pause your video for a second and you can catch up. Here's another little llama alpaca trivia question. This question is, which animal has the shorter nose and which animal has the longer nose? It's a tough one. All right, the answer is alpacas have shorter stubby noses and llamas have longer noses. I'm actually not sure if this guy is supposed to be a llama or an alpaca. I'm pretty sure he's a llama. I feel like he has more of the llama characteristics, but he does have a cute face that I feel like is a little more alpaca than llama. All right, I'm gonna give this 1 sec to dry and I'm gonna give you guys another question. The other question is going to be, which animal, alpaca or llama, has softer hair? I'll give you a hint. One of them, they make really nice soft things out of, like sweaters, out of their fur. They shave them and they use the fur. Sweaters and sometimes mittens and hats. The answer is alpaca. Alpacas have really soft, wonderful hair. That's great for making garments. I'm just giving my paint a little stir. It's sitting in here a while. We're gonna go ahead and put a second coat on this guy once he's dry. I'm gonna give mine 1 more second to dry. Well, I'm gonna ask you one more trivia question. Which animal is used as a pack animal? So if you don't know what a pack animal is an animal that carries supplies on its back, usually when you're trekking around, like if you're traveling and you have an animal with you and it carries your supplies for you. Answer is llama. Llamas are pack animals. People have used llamas for generations to carry their goods, and probably because they're so big and they're strong. They can also be used as guard animals on farms. So sometimes they'll have a whole herd of alpaca and they'll have one llama on the farm that serves as a guard llama that keeps all the other alpacas safe. So sometimes they can be together on the farm. All right, I'm just going through and putting another coat on here and making sure that my background is really white. I may grab a bigger brush just to spread this paint out a little bit. And if you feel like you need to do that, you probably have a bigger brush in your kit as well. And you can go ahead and do that. I am gonna wash my brush out. It's important when we're working with acrylic paint that we don't let the paint dry on our brushes. It's very hard to remove the paint once it is dry. So you definitely wanna make sure that you're washing your brushes in between colors and making sure that you keep them nice and clean and dry. I just went back and grabbed this big brush so I could just spread this paint out one more time. I thought I could swing it with that little brush, but I couldn't. All right. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm gonna pause for a sec and give my llama a second to dry. And while I'm doing that, if you need to pause and give your llama a second to dry, this is a good time to take a break, stretch your legs for a sec. Sometimes I use a paper plate, like as a fan. If you really want to go a little faster, you can give him one of these little fans. I also have this cute little handheld fan that sometimes I'll just blow on there just to get him dry. Or you could just do it the good old-fashioned way and just count to 120 and he should be dry. All right, we'll be right back. All right, I just waited about 2 or 3 minutes and my llama's pretty dry already. I'm gonna go ahead and rinse out this big brush because I haven't done that yet. And I'm gonna make sure my small brush is clean also. That way when we start to fill in the details, we're all ready to go. Oh, it's not clean because I put it in my white paint. Okay, we're gonna start filling in the details of our llama. We're gonna start right up here on top with our inside of our llama's ear. And to paint the inside of our llama's ear, we have this pink color. If you wanna go with this bright pink color, you can use it just as it is. If you want it to be a little more like a pastel pink, all you need to do is put a little bit of that pink onto your mixing tray and grab a little bit of white and stir this together till you get a light pink that you like. A little bit of pink and a lot of white is gonna make a really light pink. If you want it a little darker, you can use more pink and less white. Once you have the color you like, you're just carefully gonna drop it inside of the inner part of the llama alpaca's ear. I don't know what I'm gonna call him yet. I'm gonna call him llama alpaca. That was easy and fast, and our ear is done. You can rinse your brush. You can move your mixing tray to the side. And the next section we're gonna paint are these like strap lines. So his sort of harness, I wanna say, I think that's right. Okay, so we have this blue color. We don't need to mix this together with anything. We're gonna use it just as it is to fill in these 2 sections. Okay, let's talk about your brush for a second, because I'm just gonna be using this one brush today. I may have to swap out to a smaller brush to get in some of these teeny tiny little areas, but most of it we can do with this brush. So if you drag your brush across your project like this, you're gonna get a thick line. Now, if you drag your your brush across your project like this, you're gonna get a thin line. So I'm holding my brush perpendicular to my project and I'm using this skinny part of the brush to make a thin line. Let me show you how that looks. I'm just dipping in a little bit of blue and I'm holding my brush perpendicular to my project and just dragging along that line. If it doesn't feel good, or if you're just like, Julie, I don't know what perpendicular means, I'm not sure what to do, you can just swap this out for a smaller brush. That's no problem. You definitely have one in your kit, so if you need to do that, by all means, grab a smaller brush. I mentioned earlier, we will be outlining all of these sections, so go as close to that black line as you can. Don't worry if it's not perfect. It's not gonna be a big deal. I think I will get a smaller brush to fill in these little spaces in between the jewels of our alpaca's harness. But while we have this blue on this brush, we're gonna fill in this middle section of the saddle. We are gonna mix this together with white. So you need just a little bit of blue. I really just wiped off whatever I had on my brush. And I'm just gonna scoop a little white in there. And you're gonna get this pretty light blue color that we're gonna use for the inside of the saddle. So there's a couple sections here. The section that we're filling in is the top section. It's the one that's on the inside. We don't want to fill in these other two lines. Those are going to be a different color. So we just want to fill in this one section with this color. That's excellent. And wash the brush. And I'm going to grab a detail brush so that I can get in these little spots over here. So you may have one in your kit that looks like this. Probably has a blue handle as well. And we're gonna go in and just fill in these tiny spaces over here. If your paint goes on these dots, I wouldn't really worry about it too much. These are all gonna have tiles on them, so chances are you're not really gonna see them so much, but do the best you can with this little brush to avoid those dots. But we're supposed to be having fun, so if you start to get stressed out about it, just don't worry if blue gets in there. And don't worry if it's not perfectly in the lines. Even mine isn't perfectly in the lines. If you were to look really close, you would see that it's definitely far from perfect, my little friends. And these are tiny little spaces, so don't get worried about it. Just do the best you can. And take your time. Another hint I like to give when I have my little detail brush out is that if you put your hand down on the table or down onto your project so that it's resting, that will help to keep your hand steady and not shaky. I think most people that I teach, that's one of the complaints I hear all the time, that people feel that their hand is very shaky. So I try to solve that problem by putting my hand down on the table and using the stability of the table to keep my hand from wiggling. This looks good. Happy with our harness. We're gonna rinse the blue out of this brush. And we are going to, let's see. I kind of want this to dry for a minute and I want this to dry. So let's go down here and paint our alpaca's legs. That's a nice easy section too. I'm going back to my square brush and I'm grabbing this brown color. This is gonna use it just out of the container like this. We don't need to mix this together with anything. So you can jump in with your little square brush and we're just gonna fill in each one of his feet. Has these little wiggly lines up here at the top. They're really small, don't go crazy. Just go close to them. When you fill them in with black later, you're gonna see that wiggly pattern, so it doesn't have to be perfect with the brown. Better to have fun than try to make it perfect. If at any time you feel like you want to do 2 coats, you can always let your color dry and go back and do a second coat. Sometimes the colors are a little bit translucent, which means they're a little bit see-through. And if you're not happy with the look of that, you can absolutely add another coat. And if you don't want to and you're okay with the way that it looks a little streaky, you can just leave it. I'm okay with a little streaky, so I'm gonna go with 1 coat on my llama legs today. Llama legs. I feel like llamas got so popular and there's so many funny and cute llama clothes and llama stuff. Okay, got a little white on that one, but we're gonna roll with it. Okay, so my llama legs are looking good. I'm gonna rinse the brown off my brush and we're gonna move on to this yellow section of our llama blanket. And well, the same yellow is gonna be some of these beads that are on the llama's harness. So we have 2 shades of yellow/orange. We've got this bright one and then this really orange. We're gonna use this lighter one first. Maybe if I can get mine open. I used it for another project and there's paint on the, wow, did it. All right, cool. So we're filling in here, this middle section of our llama blanket. You have your small brush over here still, so if you're not feeling good about this bigger brush, you can 110% switch back over to your detail brush. I'm gonna try to make it work with this bigger guy. We are gonna be outlining everything in black. Does not have to be perfect. Will not notice later on if it is not perfect. Still trying to spread my paint out really thin too. It's an important part of the project just so that your colors are able to dry. So if you look and you see any parts that are super thick, you can always blot your brush off on the paper towel and then go back in and sort of scoop out some of that excess paint that's there. These decorations, these little baubles that are on the harness or necklace are gonna be every other gem is gonna be yellow. So we're gonna do this, 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 and this yellow. And all the ones that are left are gonna be orange. Be really careful over here. My blue section is quite wet still, probably because it was pretty thick. So just be careful as you go in here that you're not mixing your yellow and your blue together. And if that is happening to you, go ahead and take a break for a sec and let that section really dry before you go in here with the yellow to fill in these decorations. I am rinsing my yellow brush. We're gonna get ready to move to orange. Okay, so we have this final section of the blanket, and we have 3 of the necklace decorations to paint with the orange. I'm holding my brush perpendicular to my project, which means straight up and down, so that the skinny edge is touching the wood. If that's not comfortable for you, you can always switch to the detail brush. And don't forget, everything's getting outlined in black. It does not have to be perfect. I like to sort of swirl my brush around inside these little circle shapes. That's how I make them. Okie doke. She is looking wonderful. I am going to let my project dry now. The next thing that we're gonna do in step 2 of this project is outline with a Sharpie marker. It's really important that all of this paint is very dry before we move on to this part of the project. Otherwise, when we start to outline, the wet paint is gonna stick to the felt tip of this marker, and this marker is going to stop working. So we don't wanna do that. We want our marker to work, and the only way for our marker to work is for this to be very dry before we move on. So we're gonna pause for a second, and while we are paused, you're gonna go ahead and clean up all of the materials that we have out. We're done with our paint. All of the caps can go back on the paint, and these can get put off to the side. You can also get rid of your water bowl, make sure all your brushes are really clean. You can discard your mixing plate and get your workspace all tidy for the next step. So go ahead and do that now, hit pause, and we'll be right back in 1 moment. Okay, cute friends, we're back. Our alpaca llama is pretty dry. If you think your project's not dry, a good thing to do, I usually just touch it, but just be careful that you don't smudge it, but you do want to be sure that your paint is dry. So when you move on to the outlining portion, you don't ruin your marker. Okay, so my llama is dry. I have this Sharpie marker. We're gonna start at the top, and we're gonna be just outlining any section that has this little indentation. Now, I've always find it difficult to make a completely solid line, and my sort of solution to that problem is to add these little dots. So I'll start making a line, and then if my marker stops, I'll put 1 or 2 little dots and then just continue my line. if you don't like the way that looks, you can 100% try to just get a solid line. I just think it's cute, and I also think it takes some of the pressure off of having to make that line continuous. Take your time with the Sharpie marker. You don't really want to go out of the lines at this point. This is one of the only parts of the project where I would say it would be hard to fix if you make a mistake. So definitely take your time and just work slowly and make sure that you're outlining each section as you go. I think this little necklace section is probably the hardest part just because there's a lot of little lines. So slow down when you get here and make sure that you're taking your time and getting all of those little details. So far, so good. Our blanket section. You could add other details in this blanket with your Sharpie marker if you want to put anything inside of here. I'm going to leave mine plain since we will be putting tiles on this section. I do tend to like to just leave it blank, but this is your project and don't be afraid to express yourself however is comfortable for you. I'm adding these little wiggled lines here where the feet meet up with the fur of the animal. And that's really it. So our llama is totally outlined. This is a good time if you want to add your name to the back, or you know, you can sign your name, you can put the date, so you can always remember the summer that you chilled at home and made art projects. Okay, our cute alpaca is outlined and ready to go. I'm capping my marker. This is going back inside your kit and getting returned to the studio, so make sure that you put this back into your take-home kit. We are ready to do the tile part of our project. Here's what we're gonna need for the next step. You're gonna need this container of glue with a popsicle stick. We have some blue or green tiles. We have this that has mixed up colors. We have the alpaca feet color in here, brown, and then there's also orange and yellow for the decoration here on the necklace. And then we have different kinds of white tiles that we're gonna use for the alpaca llama's fur. So I'm gonna actually start with the necklace and blanket. So I'm gonna put my white tiles to the side for a second and focus on those two. There's probably, I'm gonna pour these tiles out so I can see what I have. And there's probably a pink tile in here. Oh, there it is. Who knows where that pink tile is gonna go? Yep, you got it, going inside the ear. One of the reasons that I like to pour my tiles out is so that I can see what I have. But another reason that I like to pour my tiles out is that sometimes we cut the tiles for you so that they'll fit, especially with this project, since these legs are really skinny, you'll probably have brown tiles inside your cup that have been cut. So we don't recommend sticking your finger in there, in that cup and digging around. We would recommend just pouring the tiles out so you can easily access what you need. We're going to talk about gluing for a minute. There's a couple of ways to glue your tiles down. The first, and in my opinion, easiest way is to dip your popsicle stick in the glue, put a dot of glue onto your project, and then adhere your tile. Alternatively, you could dip your popsicle stick in the glue, put the glue onto your tile, and then stick your tile on. So you can see where I've put my tiles on. There's some white glue. Oh, now there's white glue on top of my tile. There's some white glue around my tiles. You don't need to worry about any excess glue that happens around your tiles. That's gonna dry totally clear. So Don't worry about it, and if it goes out there, it goes out there. We do recommend putting your tiles onto your project and making sure you like the way they look before you glue them in place. For this section, there's not a lot that can go wrong since we're sort of just putting the tiles into these designated areas. But as we move forward, especially in the white section, it's nice to have an idea about how the tiles are gonna look before you glue them in place. Once you glue them down, they're pretty much stuck and they're really hard to move. So it's really nice to make sure that you like the way they look before you glue them. You may have extra tiles. Sometimes we throw a few extra in just for good measure. So if that happens, you can just put these to the side. You can put them back in your bag and return them. Our necklace looks good, as does the ear. I'm gonna work on my alpaca's feet, my llama's feet, since we have the foot color there is out on the table already. So if they should be able to fit in this little space. We've tried to trim them for you. You're not gonna be able to fit a ton of tiles in these little sections, so you're gonna need to just sort of space them out and do what you can to fill it in a little bit, but don't go crazy, just try to fill it in as best as you can. This is a good time to lay out before you glue to make sure that you're comfortable with the way that the tiles look before you glue them in place. All my alpaca's feet are glued in. I'm gonna put these extra tiles back inside my cup and put them off to the side since we're done with these colors. Next, I'm gonna work on the blanket of our alpaca. So you're gonna have some blue or some teal, some blue-green, something in the blue family. And you're gonna wanna take a second, just like we said before, and find a pattern in here that you like. So you may have a couple different size tiles. You may need a minute to sort of work it out and figure out, okay, how can I fit, should I do a big one? Should I do a small one? So this is kind of a fun design part of the project where you're gonna take a couple of minutes to figure out what looks best to you. And when you do, once you like the way your design looks, you can go ahead and glue your tiles in place. All right, my blanket section is good. I'm liking the way it looks. And I am gonna move on to my llama fur. I would definitely say take a few minutes to lay these tiles out before you glue them down, just so you know exactly how it's gonna look. And once you have your tiles the way you like them, you can glue them down. You're not gonna have enough tiles to completely cover your llama's fur. So you don't need to place them in the same way that we did in our sample. We did sort of these bottom parts of the leg and then the tail. You could take these, you could put some on the head, you could spread them out so that they're sort of evenly covering the entire project. Whatever feels good to you, but definitely plan it out before you glue them. That way you have an idea about exactly how they're gonna look. liking it just as it is. So I do have some extra circles, but I'm not gonna use them. So I'll go ahead and pack those back up into my kit. And at this point, I think we're pretty much done. So it's important to leave your project to dry nice and flat. We would say overnight, just to make sure the glue really has some time to dry before you stand it up to display it. But I hope you all had the best time creating with us today, and I hope you enjoy your Llama Mosaic. Have a great day.